Hi guys, my name is Noni Matikela. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So today let's talk about Mncube. He is currently on the witness box after all the allegations that were leveled against him by Brigadier Gininda and the state, which is the prosecution. Let's see here, how is he doing? Because currently he is the man that is sitting in the witness box defending himself. It's his time to shine, Kesana. And we are hearing his side of the story. And I want to take you through to some of the things that he has said and how he has responded to the things that were alleged by Geninda against him. If you are new in the channel, my name is Noni Matikela. Welcome to my Noni M podcast. Today, we need to talk about something very important happening inside the Senzumeiwa because Mthobisi Mncube is no longer sitting quietly as accused number 3. He is now there inside Phakathi, the witness box. And from that position, he is doing something strategically significant. He is not only defending himself against the allegations, he is attacking the credibility of the process that allegedly placed him inside this case. And that changes everything. Because the question is no longer simple, did Mncube commit the murder? The question becomes, how did the state arrive at Mncube in the first place? And can that journey withstand scrutiny? Let's start, okay? Mncube's first line of defense. Mncube's fundamental position is straightforward. He denies being the person who was inside the Khumalo house when Senzumeiwa was shot and killed. That means the state has to connect him to that house through reliable evidence, not suspicions, not assumptions, not similarities, evidence. And that is where his defense becomes interesting because Mncube is essentially forcing the court to separate three different questions. What did the alleged intruder look like? Who was Mncube? And most importantly, were those two people actually the same person? Those questions may sound similar. Legally, they are not because they need to be proven. Secondly, the dreadlocks issue. He addressed it. One of the most important pieces of identification evidence against Mncube has been his appearance, particularly the dreadlocks. The state has evidence that Mncube had dreadlocks around the relevant period. But here is the problem. Mncube's defense is trying to expose having dreadlocks does not make someone the person who committed the crime. Think about it. If a witness says there was a man with dreadlocks and the accused has dreadlocks, that may be relevant, right? But it's not automatically the identification. The prosecution still has to establish was that Mncube, and how reliable was the identification? How good were the conditions? How long did the witness observe the person? What exactly did the witness see? And was the identification independent? That is where Mncube is trying to create reasonable doubt. And again, in this video, when he says my dreadlocks were long and we see the pictures, and then compared to what the sketch was drawn, to the sketch that was drawn, Mncube is not the perpetrator because he had long dreadlocks that were plaited, and the sketch shows short dreadlocks up to here. Okay, there's a huge difference. Thirdly, the identity parade question. And then we get to one of the biggest weapons in Mncube's defense, identification. Mncube has challenged the circumstances surrounding his identification and raised the issue of the identity parade. And this is important because the central question in this case has always been who killed Senzo, not who looks familiar, not who had dreadlocks, not who eventually became a suspect, but who was actually inside that house. If the state if the state case depends on identification, then the reliability of that identification becomes crucial because once investigators identify a suspect, there is always a danger that subsequent evidence can become interpreted through that existing suspicion. And Mncube is effectively saying, don't just look at where the investigation ended, look at how it got there. That is what Mncube says. And Mncube also mentions, I am very light skinned. The description of the people inside the house was a man that was dark, and the parade situation they held, they invited dark-skinned men. And also, mind you, the first man that was arrested had short dreadlocks and was dark-skinned. So how is this going to be Mncube now, a light-skinned man? Number four, now Gininda enters the crosshairs. Okay, this is where things become explosive. Mncube has made allegations concerning Brigadier Bongani Gininda and the manner in which the investigation was conducted. His evidence has challenged the integrity of the investigative process and included allegations that investigators or witnesses were pressured concerning their statements. Now, let me make something very clear. These are Mncube's allegations. Okay, they are not automatically facts. They still have to be tested against evidence. But from a defense perspective, this is extremely important because if Mncube can establish that the investigation was influenced, manipulated, or improperly directed, then he doesn't only create doubt about individual pieces of evidence, he creates doubt about the reliability of the investigation as a whole. And imagine if Mncube as an accused can do that, and us people that are observers of the case have managed to also do all of that. Okay. And then there is also number five, Lishebane becomes important. And this is where evidence from Major General Lishebane becomes significant to the defense narrative. Lishebane's evidence has been brought into the discussion concerning alleged attempts to influence or change statements. Okay? Mncube is using that evidence to support his broader challenge. Was everyone involved in the investigation independently following the evidence, or the pressure to arrive at a particular conclusion? Again, we must be very careful. Lishebane's evidence does not automatically prove every allegation Mncube makes, but Mncube doesn't necessarily need every allegation to be proven in order to make his broader defense argument relevant. His objective is to persuade the court that the state's evidence must be examined with extreme caution, especially if Lishebane said, I was asked to change what I wrote. I refused, and I got angry because I'm a general, and then there are civilians. If I am treated this way, how much more then of civilians that are supposed to be witnesses? You remember that evidence? Mncube touched on that too. Also, number six, the most important distinction, and this for me is the heart of Mncube's defense. Listen very careful when it comes to this one. Mncube having dreadlocks is one fact. Mncube appearing in photographs is another fact. A witness describing a person with dreadlocks is another fact. But none of those facts, standing alone, necessarily proves Mncube was inside the Khumalo house when Senzo was killed, especially with the description that was given by the people inside the house. When they say the person was dark skinned, that time Mncube is very light skinned. They said the dreadlocks were short. That time Mncube's dreadlocks were very long. Do you see? Now, that is the gap the defense is trying to expose. The state has to bridge that gap. If how, I don't know. And it has to do with the reliable evidence because Sana is getting trickier and kuningia. Now, number seven, Mncube is basically putting the investigation on trial. Okay, he is on trial, but he's also putting the investigation on trial. This is why his testimony is important, is potentially so important. Mncube is not simply saying, I am innocent. His defense is effectively saying, show me the reliable evidence that puts me there, and then show me the investigation that produced that evidence was clean, and then show me that the identification was reliable, and finally show me that the evidence survives scrutiny independently of the police theory against me. That is a much more sophisticated defense than simply denying the allegation. Now, the biggest question for the court, but now it becomes the difficult part for Mncube because the witness box cut both ways. If you take the stand, you don't simply get an opportunity to tell your story. You expose your story to cross-examination. Every contradiction becomes important. Every inconsistency becomes important. Every unexplained detail becomes important, and the state will have an opportunity to test whether Mnube's version is genuinely capable of creating reasonable doubt. So Mnube has a difficulty balancing. So Mnube has a difficult balancing act. He has to convince the court that the state's case is unreliable without creating new problem for his own defense. Do you see how hard it is to become an accused person? Now, so what is Mnube doing? What is Mnube doing from the witness box? He is fighting on two fronts. Front number one, I was not the person who killed Senzo Meiwa. Front number two, and you cannot rely on an investigation that says that I say was compromised to prove that I was. The second battle may ultimately become just as important as the first because the state because if the state can produce a clean, reliable chain of evidence connecting Mncube to the crime scene, his allegations against the investigations may not be enough. But if the defense succeeds in exposing serious weaknesses in the in the investigative procedure, witness reliability, and chain through which Mncube became a suspect, then the state has much bigger problems because criminal trials are not about proving that an accused person could have committed a crime. They are about proving that he did, beyond reasonable doubt, that crime. And that is precisely the battlefield Mncube has entered. The witness box is now his courtroom battlefield, and the question is no longer simple. What does Mncube say? The question is, can the state's evidence survive everything Mncube is throwing at it? That is the question we are watching unfold. This is Noni Madikela. This is the Noni M podcast, and I'll see you on the next one. Remember to follow the evidence, not the noise. I'll see you. Mwah.